But I want to start off with the first thing. I mean, like for those wondering, Jubian, and correct me in the language. In which language does it mean upheaval?
Mandarin.
Oh, it's in Mandarin. All right.
Yeah.
Now, one of the first things that strikes me about the album, right, is while this is the band Ripped to Shreds' third album, this is the first band album, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because the first
Yeah.
two were kind of done solo. So, how would
Yeah.
you kind of describe that evolution, literally from it being a one-man project to now a four-piece band?
I mean, originally, because like I never planned to play live, but I started getting some like offers, and I thought, okay, maybe, I should just take the plunge and like find some people to play with. And then, once I hooked up with Ryan and Brian, and we started playing together, to me it just made sense. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna make them a part of the full band. And so actually, the first full band recording we did was the flexi for Decibel Magazine.
Okay.
That was Sacrificial Fire, and that was like the first band recording, and then that gave me like kind of let me know what everyone was capable of and how I should write to really take advantage of everyone's abilities. And then so when it came for the new album, I had a lot of confidence in what I could do and the confidence in knowing that whatever I write, these guys can handle it. Yeah, and it also frees me up a bit, to do live stuff, because if I'm worried that okay, now we play live, what if there's like too many parts? What if, I mean, the long song on this album, we're not gonna play that live, but
I'm glad
having a
you
second,
addressed the elephant in the room already, right? Like, get it out of the way.
yeah, having a second guitarist and second vocalist, lets us, try like a dual vocals live. We can play all the harmonies live. So yeah, I think it just lets me write with the confidence that I can be assured everything is going to be, translated well live.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the interesting parts that especially when you see in death metal, right? I mean, like, let's not get into that whole tech that discussion
Mm-hmm.
about recording, studio, and live, right? But there's something I would say, like watching death metal live, there's like a certain primal aspect about it. That's why I kind of enjoy going to concerts, right? It's that raw feel in there. You don't want that like kind of processed sound. Oh, you definitely don't want a backing track, right?
Oh yeah, no. At least, okay, I understand why symphonic bands have backing tracks, but it's not for our kind of music,
Yeah.
because we were very punk influenced, late 80s hardcore, Swedish hardcore. The other guys all played in a crossover or modern hardcore bands. So there's also like a big punk sensibility. And I think whenever we talk about like Swedish death metal, it owes a huge debt to the Swedish punk scene. So, I think it would just be really strange for us to be a kind of band that would use backing tracks. And we have to, I mean, well, if you've got, a light show and you've got like a fire pyrotechnic stuff, okay, yeah, you got to have that all synced to, click track, and you've got all your laptops and backing tracks and whatever. But, we're at the end of the day, we're just like a dirty death metal band. We don't have all these fancy frills and stuff. We try to present, the raw live energy.
Let's dive a bit more into Jubian. And one of the things I was very curious about, right, is that while a lot of, and what I really must appreciate is while a lot of the death metal I enjoy, like, Bolt Thrower and stuff like that, while it's kind of inspired by war, you decided to kind of steer away from that, right? And stay true to the whole aspect, which I definitely want to dive more into it, is about your Chinese heritage, right? And that kind of background, which also once we have to ask you about is can you tell us more about the whole Sun Moon Holy cult? Because
Oh yeah, yeah.
from what I've read, it's actually inspired by martial art novels that are written by the Chinese author Jin Young. So tell
Yeah,
us about
yeah,
that whole aspect, right? I'm really curious.
yeah. So I feel like death metal has like a pretty narrow range of acceptable topics. It has to be dark and negative in order to match the general feeling of the music, right? So you're automatically kind of limited to violent things, death, war, pain, monsters. And I love Bolt Thrower, I love Asphyx, I love Hail of Bullets. And but the thing I see with all these all these uh war themed bands, it's very much Eurocentric, right?
Hmm.
Almost everyone only sings about World War II. I mean,
Yeah.
even like World War One is like pretty rare. And then outside of the European theater, you basically there aren't any bands that sing about it. So for me, when it came to approaching, historical themes or war themes, I felt like I wanted to do it from the perspective, from the Chinese perspective, because it's just something that hasn't been touched on, and there's thousands of years of history and totally brutal shit that you can sing about that no one really has before. So that's where I'm kind of coming from, with songs like like Violent Compulsion, or like Opening Salvo, or like Open Grave, all those songs. And then for the Sun Moon Holy Cult, yeah. So Jing Yong is like one of the biggest martial arts novelists of all time. He wrote a lot of novels that are super influential still today. They're still making like TV spin-offs and
Wow.
movies and all that of his books. Even though they were written back in like they were written like as newspaper serials back in the
Whoa.
60s and 70s. And then they were like later collected into uh, uh, volumes and sold as like books, right? So uh, the main series that I took inspiration from would have been Smiling Proud Wanderer, and
Hmm.
there are a whole bunch of adaptations of it. I think for people older than me, they would know the Hong Kong like 1987, I think, adaptation, but that's like the kind of like the generation before mine. And then so I mainly know the 2001 mainland China CCTV adaptation, and also the Jet Li movies. But yeah, so basically, uh, there's all sorts of different martial arts sects. Some are against, the government. Some are, just for themselves. There's always like a beggar or a peasant kind of sect where it's like homeless people,
Hmm.
or otherwise downtrodden parts of society. And they're all trying to like become the strongest martial arts warrior in the world, right? So that's kind of where you can find a lot of interesting conflict, or I guess just generally violent stuff you could write about.
Okay. So I think you've piqued my interest, and I hope definitely for all the listeners and everyone tuned in. Now, another thing I was very curious to talk to you about is when I read that actually the album was recorded and mixed at your home studio. So I have to ask you now, when was the last time you actually heard the album in its entirety?
uh Probably like an hour ago. It's I mean, I'm not someone who's shy about listening to their own music,
Okay.
because when I write music, my biggest goal is to write something that I want to hear. I
Hmm.
I want to write, my dream album. If it came out and I just saw it in a store somewhere, I want it to be an album that I would be like, I need to listen to that. And when I put it on, I want to be like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. So, I often feel so I don't feel weird about listening to my own music at all. Um, and I mean, I listened to it a lot when I was mixing it.
Yeah,
So,
exactly, right?
but when you hear it in the little bits and pieces, and you don't hear it as a record front to back, it's slightly different experience. And of course, once I finished mixing and handed it off to Damien to do the mastering, he also imparts his own sonic touch to it. So what I heard during the tracking and the mixing here is still a bit different than the final product.
Okay. Yeah. Because that's one of the things I think when you work on your own music, right? It's like reach that saturation point
Yeah,
in there. And
yeah.
that's what I was kind of checking on. But
I think it helps that I am usually working on 5 different projects at once. I've got another album coming out in on November 4th, uh, Hokugo Grind Time,
yeah.
and then that was recorded. Actually, that was recorded in December. I just took December off because we had pretty big gaps between recording the drums, just because the way that we did the drums, you know, Brian would take like 2 songs and really practice them, and he would come down here and we'd record 2 songs, and then he would go back, spend another couple of weeks studying the next few songs, and then come back here and record 2 songs, and then so that way we spaced out the recordings over several months, and Brian was able to really focus and practice on each song, but then that left me a lot of time to kind of do whatever down here. So in that period of time, I was like, okay, you know what, it's time to record a new Hokugo Grind Time album.
So this is that point of the interview where I have to take a deep breath and ask you, Azat, Goon, Skull Smasher, Hukugu Grind Time, Archard Chinani. I hope I got that
Arch
correct.
Aganini.
Archard Genie. Okay. You got a solo project that you did also last year. Do you have time for any more projects?
um so it's actually kind of funny because I'm not actually really working on music every single day. Okay, I have to pick up my guitar and play and practice, and that's like a daily thing. But when it comes to actually writing music, I have to be in a mode for writing,
Hmm.
and I I basically I can't let anything else distract me while I'm doing it. So maybe I have like a month or two where every day I'm not really doing much. I play guitar. I play some video games, watch some anime, and then I get an idea for some kind of release that I want to do. Then I drop everything. I have to work on it every single day, write, record, and then I only eat, sleep, drink, and breathe this release until I'm basically done. And once that's done, then it's like kind of like I'm in hibernation again. I'm not really doing anything until I get another idea.
Okay, that's a very interesting approach to kind of take it, and especially considering you have multiple projects in there. So that's a smart way of doing things.